Hey y'all, it's Craig. Well, Rush is gone. Long live Rush. Yeah, long live Rush Limbaugh, the man who talked me down off the edge. Uh, Years ago, I was a bit of a liberal, and I believed in a lot of the messages of the left, and I was sorely disappointed. I had voted for Clinton the second time around, and I thought I had a business, and I thought he was doing the right thing. He and Newt Gingrich were cooperating. They're operating government in a manner that made me think that maybe he was the right guy. There was a lot of talk across the aisles. That was a real thing back then. But obviously, in hindsight, we can see the damage that the Clintons have done, and well, we can see how the liberals have been pushed out of the Democrat Party and have been replaced by the progressives, which ultimately turned out to be leftists. So that's what we have now in the Democrats is really hardcore leftists are running that party. They might still speak kind of like the liberals, but they don't act like them. They don't do the kind of programs that are trying to lift everybody up. They're doing the kind of programs now that are sinking us all under taxes. It's all about bigger and bigger government and less personal responsibility. But it was Rush Limbaugh who really brought to my attention the antics of the left by calling them out and showing me, in his confident way that they were lying to me, and giving me those examples made all the difference. I was able to look into it a little further, and this was before the internet was really a useful thing, and you still had to read and try to listen to the people where you could find them, which really, I'm thinking this is back in the late '90s. Um, there just wasn't the access to conservative thought like there is now, and shoot, it's kind of hard to find now, right? I mean, look at what's happening. Conservatives are being pushed off of Facebook and off of YouTube and certainly Twitter and so much of the social media. Um, I've got my the Coastal Conservative page on Facebook, and I don't even post on it anymore. I'm lucky if 12 people get to see any post I put on there. They just do that to you. They put you in their algorithm, as they call it. And it's a shame because you can't really have the yin without the yang. If you're going to have the liberal side, you should also have the conservative side so that you can compare the two. But now we're becoming our government's becoming so left of center. There is no conservative side left. So now you're sort of like, well, it's the difference between the progressives and the leftists. There's not even the liberals. It's just gone so far to the left, and the no one takes responsibility for a damn thing in Congress, right? I mean, there's lies. I was having this conversation earlier today. One of the biggest criticisms against Trump by the folks on the left has always been, well, he's a liar. He lies all the time, and we've all had the opportunity to take a look at that list of lies that Trump told, and it's laughable because most of these it's a matter of opinion, or a lot of them it's just Trump's humor. They don't seem to get it, or they're so busy parsing all the words that they miss the context entirely, and that's what the left has become. As let's get all bogged into these details and not look at the big picture. The big picture is the United States is full of people who are citizens and people who are not citizens, but people who are citizens who pay taxes, who basically hope this country doesn't get in their way of making a decent livelihood and maybe even getting somewhere in life. Most of us just really want to be left alone, to do our thing, to have our friends as we wish to have them, to maybe get a little bit of a reward for our hard work. And, we don't really expect anything out of the government other than, try to keep people from throwing bombs at us. But for some reason, the left has decided that the government should be much more than that the government should make all our decisions for us, should take care of us, that it owes us anything, which is crazy because the government is only an extension of the people, right? I mean, the government can't spend a dime that it doesn't already take from somebody else first. It's not in business, it doesn't manufacture anything. It's just there to facilitate the business of this country, to make sure that we get along with the foreign countries and we do commerce in a legal way that isn't getting us killed or killing us inadvertently through misuse. But what we're seeing now, especially now, is a government that puts up walls around the Capitol building, the People's House, wants to tear down walls that we put across our border. It's nuts. Without a border, you don't have a country. Without people having access to the government, you don't have a government that responds to the people. And it's like these are two diametrically opposed concepts that are all embodied by one government right now. It's like the whole insurgency on the Capitol. I don't recall seeing anyone armed with anything that stormed the Capitol. I know people died. At least 2 were heart attacks. The one cop that was supposed to have been bludgeoned by a fire extinguisher and killed with it, they're saying they're not even telling us what killed the guy. He died later on that day. But we know the initial news reports about being bludgeoned by a fire extinguisher and all that is false. There's nothing to back that up at all. We've seen, on mainstream media, we see videotape of the unrest, and it looks really, really violent. It's right down there in the middle of it, kind of in front of the Capitol there. But then we see video of what was going on inside with the so-called attack, where it seemed like they just sort of let these guys in there. There's just seemed like a couple handfuls of people went in there. We saw the guys that got into the Senate chamber, and they kind of danced around a little bit, and the guy with the horns got his picture taken, and we saw the cops interacting with him, and it didn't seem, too disorderly, really. We saw that poor woman get shot and killed, but after watching that, right away, so many of us were like, well, those are Antifa guys. Those are a bunch of those anarchist people. There's the same people we saw in D.C. over the summer, or we see in Portland, or we see wherever. We've talked about this stuff before. But you remember right afterwards, it only took a few days for them to identify the guy that blew up the camper in Nashville, and but we've yet to hear anything about actually the people who stormed Congress and the Capitol. They know all about these people, and they've been, these guys, they might be on the far right, or these guys might be this. It's like, guys, they're all anarchists. All right, there's no left or right with anarchy. It's not a political party. They want to get rid of all of that, okay? They want to get rid of government. It's anarchy. So they're not on the side of the left, and they're not on the side of the right. But the left has let these guys run crazy over the summer, and they've certainly emboldened them enough that they felt like they could easily storm the Capitol. And it was obviously, you could see they were communicating with each other. I don't know who's in charge or if anyone in particular is in charge, but they all thought this would be a pretty good idea to go do it, and they did it. And they tried to get a bunch of Trump people swept up with them. We saw it, right? But it shook things up enough that that it disrupted the whole sequence of questioning the states that had the contested ballots, the dueling electoral votes, and it achieved what they wanted to achieve. Ultimately, Joe was installed as president. But now that that has passed, and we're watching the kind of business that they're doing, and Joe's just signing one executive order after the next. There's nothing going on in Congress at all other than that impeachment that obviously, they screwed up yet again, and he's acquitted yet again. It's that thing that, like Rush would have told us and reminded us, it's that thing that the Democrats do. They treat government as if it's their own little game, and they've got to move the pieces around to please them. And it doesn't really matter if moving the pieces around helps or hurts the population of the country. They don't care about us. They just want to move the pieces around to the places where they want them to be. For whatever mysterious reason, they want to move them to that spot. They don't even try to explain it to you. They don't even care to explain it to you. They just want to do what they want to do. And so, what's the effect of stuff like that, right? It's just making decisions because these are the decisions we want to make. Like the new Green Deal or whatever they're going to call it. Green energy in particular. Boy, did we get a great illustration this week. They are out in Texas. Get this horrible cold snap and snow and everything else. And what happens? Well, you get all this snow on top of the solar panels, and they don't work so great. And you get all these frozen wind turbines, and they don't turn anymore, all frozen. And all of a sudden, you're not making that electricity that you're counting on. And because you've tore down those coal-burning power plants, or you never built them in the first place, you don't have any reliable form of energy, and so you've got a rolling blackouts, just like in California, right? That's not good planning. I'm sure the green stuff sounds good, although it's goofy, right? Windmills, that's like the Dutch used 150 years ago. Solar panels, it's like, come on, that's fine for that oddly glowing little walkway light, but it's not the way you power a city. The one thing about electricity, you want it to be reliable. You want it to be super reliable and safe. And, we figured that out 100 years ago. We figured out electricity. We know how to generate electricity in a lot of very reliable ways. And it doesn't cause that much pollution. And we've figured out green ways of burning coal. We know how to use natural gas. Nuclear energy has evolved so much farther. And it's so safe now in comparison, and it generates so little waste. We have so many better ways of making power. But that's not what we're doing. We're doing it because they want to move the piece over here. Well, this is green because, these are our friends in this industry. We put them in these positions of power where, the left didn't create the oil industry. They didn't create the nuclear industry. But they did create this green industry, which is it's a bunch of nonsense. It doesn't, what's the result? Think about it. Solar power. It's only really doing any work at all when the sun hits the panel, right? So obviously at night, not doing you any good. Cloudy days, not doing you much good. If anything blocks that panel, like snow falling on it, it's not working so good. Okay, so right there, you've got less than half the time the thing's going to work. No good. Wind energy, same deal. It's not always windy enough to turn those things, or sometimes it's too windy, and then they got to shut them down so they don't fly apart. The maintenance on those things is crazy. It's very, very expensive. It's got to be a special person to go all the way up into one of those things and work on it. And you got to oil them and take care of them and do all those things. And yeah, they chop birds up and they get hit by lightning, and yeah, they become obsolete in 5 years or so, and they never pay for themselves. But never mind, let's build a bunch more of them. And so you wind up with troubles like I just experienced in Texas, or California had their rolling blackouts over the summer and over the winter. These just we're supposed to evolve. This is not evolution, okay? The green energy thing is a farce. But again, just to move your piece over here. And again, just like our buddy Rush would tell us, it's like you got to look at these guys and determine what's their motivation. Because if they're telling you it's to help out the people, you'd be pretty darn sure it's only helping out a couple people, and they're a couple people with a lot of money who donate a lot of the money to these guys. And they don't donate money to politicians because they believe in their philosophy. They donate the money to the politicians because they need somebody that's going to be a mule to push things through to help them. They want payback. They pay that politician to do work for them. We pay them too, right? Taxpayers pay them too, but that's not nearly as lucrative. It's like, look at Fauci, right? The highest paid government employee, okay? This guy that, is like, oh, God, don't wear masks. Oh, wear masks. Oh, wear 2 masks, right? This guy just lives to be on television. He's been out there. He's worked for his government his entire career, right? He makes all that money. But he still is like, that's not good enough. And so they award him this $1 million prize like last week, for his great work, on the virus. These guys are all looking for, a better deal. You can pay them all the money in the world, and it doesn't make them loyal to you at all. These politicians are pretty well paid, but they get rich, right? I mean, they have multiple multi-million-dollar houses. That doesn't happen from the salary we give them. It comes from selling their influence. That's where the money comes from. It's not speeches and stuff like that. That's nonsense. That's a smokescreen. It's like, oh yeah, Bill gave these speeches, and boy, people just love to listen to Bill speaker. Yeah, can you imagine anyone paying Joe Biden to speak? Come on. Joe Biden has to pay people to write words for him to speak because he doesn't know what the hell he's going to say. No, that's not where we are anymore. Where we are is we've got politicians who, there's no other way to say it. They're not in it to do a public service. They tell you they are, but their actions betray them. You look at somebody like Pelosi. She's been there for ages, and she's got a lot of power, and nobody messes with her, right? Is that good? Nobody on the left, right, in the Democrat Party ever votes against anything that party tells them to do. We just saw it. You see it over and over and over again. They might bicker a little bit on TV, but when it comes down to voting, they vote in line. Now, Republicans hardly ever do that. They have a little bit more freedom of thought. But what you see more and more is, of course, a lot of Republicans voting exactly the same way as the Democrats because, frankly, they're the same people. They're paid by the same people. The party doesn't matter. That little bit of money the taxpayers give them and that little bit of responsibility they're supposed to show to their constituents back home, that's not really part of the picture. And that's, of course, we've spoken about that before. That's why they wanted to get rid of Trump. Trump was taking that all away from them. They couldn't sell inside information. They couldn't force him to do what they wanted him to do. In other words, what their sponsors were telling him to make him to do. So they hated him. They didn't hate him because of the way he spoke or any of those things, or he's out of side of Washington kind of guy. No, they hated him because he was cutting off the trough, and they didn't have that influence. They weren't important anymore. So, that's the kind of thing that Rush Limbaugh exposed me to, was the fact that, hey, these guys, they tell you one thing, but they deliver something completely different. And you need to actually look at their work and see what they've done. And, of course, that's why Rush was really pleased with Trump. Just the same reason the rest of us are. Here was a guy that just knew how to get things done. And that's all we really want out of government, right? just do the thing, right, Joe? Do the thing, and not this other stuff. That's not what you're there to do. I understand that's lucrative, but you're supposed to be better than the rest of us and smarter so that you don't have to go after that lucrative stuff, right? You're supposed to just do the business of the people. I mean, we've all come to learn what to expect out of those guys, but I got to tell you, this last couple of weeks especially, it's just been amazing. You know, it's funny. They say, well, now that the impeachment is over, Joe can really start for real on his presidency. And I'm thinking to myself, it's like, well, I think at that point he was well over 40 executive orders. Like, oh, okay, so what were those? That wasn't real, or what is real? And now they're like, oh, well, Kamala's actually talking to the foreign leaders, not Joe. And Joe will certainly meet with some of these foreign leaders, although he hasn't talked to Netanyahu yet. But he'll certainly talk to everybody soon, maybe in the next couple of months. What? This guy's the president of the United States, right? You'd think he'd be right out there, especially if they got rid of the evil Trump and it's back to business as usual. You'd think he'd be out there talking with all these guys and they'd be having meetings upon meetings. But no, Joe's just going to stay locked away, I guess, now in the White House in a closet over there. I don't know what he does. It's weird. And, I was watching little bits and pieces of that town hall he had the other night. Was it last night or the night before? I can't remember now. And, man, he doesn't seem to be getting better. He still says stuff that just doesn't even make any sense. And he looks worried, and, he just doesn't look like a confident person. He looks like a confused old guy. And, God willing, maybe I'll live long enough to be a confused old guy. Nothing against confused old guys. Maybe I'm already one. But that's not who I want as president. It's not to do with age. It's having to do with your cognitive ability. It's like I want somebody out there that's wheeling and dealing. It's funny, as much as they said that, they couldn't stand the way Trump spoke and tweeted and all that stuff. I liked the way he represented us. He was tough. It's like, no, it's America first, because that's who I work for. But we can help you guys too. It's like, just because we're winning doesn't mean that we're not helping to pull you guys across the line behind us. And certainly that was traditionally our role as Americans, At least for the last 100 years, we've been really good at that. We've been really good at helping the world go a little further. Let us help you win the war for the good side, for the people, instead of these evil-minded leaders that wanted to squash the world. But and that reminds me too, the Democrats have always said, that's what they represent. It's like, well, we're here to look out for the people, but I don't see any of the actions they've been taking as being there for the people. They're eliminating work. They don't seem to really have a good handle on how to keep rolling out the vaccine. They give us mixed messages on the virus, right? They're like, oh, you got a double mask. We got to take this even farther. But then on the other side, you've got, like Cuomo and stuff say, well, we got to open up New York. And then you're looking at the numbers of like people being hospitalized or deaths and all that, and it's just plummeting. It's like we've dropped off a cliff as far as numbers go ever since the inauguration. But they don't tell you that. They're telling you, no, you got a double mask, and we're going to have a dark winter, and this might be going on for many, many more months, maybe all year. It's like, this isn't what we need. This is a time right now where we have to just face reality for what it is. It's time to get back to work. It's time to take away these restrictions. They haven't done any bit of good. And we can see the numbers. There's been over a year now. We can look at this and say, okay, that was a novel idea. We tried it, and we gave it our best. But you can't hide from a virus. It's a virus. If you're susceptible to it, it's going to find you eventually. And the good news is, with this particular virus, the odds are really strong on your side that you're going to get over it just fine. If you're under the age of 60, odds are great. You're going to be just fine. Doesn't mean that some people aren't going to succumb to it. It's a virus, just like all the rest of them. But the way we treated it is nuts, and that's been borne out. We're seeing, the suicides, the people missing doctors' visits, the abuse, the alcoholism, drug abuse, everything else. I mean, it's through the roof. This has just been a horrible idea. And God knows how many small businesses have failed and suffered because of this. And, at the same time, when the government is telling us, no, we're going to help you out, we've got to close things down, but, we've passed multiple trillions now to help people, but that, they're talking about another 1.9, basically $2 trillion more, right? That's what Joe wants. But they're still sitting on close to $1 trillion that they haven't even doled out yet. So why do we want to take on this other $2 trillion of debt, which is enormous amounts of money? I mean, I don't know how we'll ever pay the 28 trillion that we already are in debt to. You can't just keep piling this on. I mean, this is nuts, right? And there's nothing that I'm seeing Joe speak about that encourages business. So it's like, well, so if you're not helping business out and you're going back kind of to the old Obama ways of economy, which is the doldrums, and you're adding more and more debt, where does that take us? What's the plan? And, you don't hear that at all. So, I think about days like this and how we've just lost Rush, but we've gained all that insight over all these years. And now we have to apply it. We have to apply that knowledge and I guess apply our own elbow grease to kind of get the job done, because we voted the way we were supposed to vote. I don't trust that election at all, and I do trust that the true numbers are going to start coming out, because they're trying. You look at Maricopa County in Arizona, and they're fighting, trying to get a real audit, and Georgia, certainly, but other states too. I think in places that you wouldn't even expect. Sooner or later, that information is going to come out. And what are we going to do? Armed with knowledge, hopefully we'll do the right thing. Hopefully we're going to be able to demand a little conservatism back in government. Start to work for the people instead of yourselves, politicians. Do the job that you said you wanted to do, that you agreed to, the job that you gave your oath to look out for our Constitution, to look out for our people. Do that. We'll demand it, as we've been taught to demand it, and we'll expect much. Beaver. Have a great day, and thanks for listening.